Republicans continue to whine and cry about the Supreme Court's ruling on same-sex marriage, and one example is actually the Texas Attorney General, a man by the name of Ken Paxton. Now, he says that as a clerk living in Texas, you don't necessarily have to issue marriage licenses. He says the following. Paxton noted that clerks who refuse to issue licenses can expect to be sued, but added that numerous lawyers stand ready to assist clerks defending their religious beliefs, in many cases without charge. So he's noting that this is, in his perspective, a huge attack on religious liberty, religious freedom, and as a result, clerks can cite that religious freedom as an effort to deny marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Now, he's wrong, and it's interesting that he's an attorney general who's gotten this wrong, but he says the following. Friday, the United States Supreme Court again ignored the text and spirit of the Constitution, no they didn't, to manufacture a right that simply does not exist. In doing so, the court weakened itself and weakened the rule of law, but did nothing to weaken our resolve to protect religious liberty and return to democratic self-government in the face of judicial activists attempting to tell us how to live. So there he goes. He's basically giving clerks a pass if they deny the marriage licenses, which they just can't do. You can't do it. I mean, it's the equivalent of someone saying, I'm a doctor, but I have a religious, issue with blood. So as a result, I can't do anything that involves blood. No, you're a doctor, okay? You have to follow the law and do what doctors need to do. As a clerk, you need to follow the law and do what clerks are supposed to do, and that includes issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples.
If you think you're extraordinarily brave and this is a matter of principle for you, and you say, I'm not going to do my job, if the law says that I must give a marriage license to a gay couple, I will not do it. Great, no problem. You're fired. Now we'll find someone who will do their job. And hey, good on you, okay? You had a principle. I don't agree with it. I think it's hateful and intolerant. But you wanted to stick with it? Great. Go stick with it at your home, sitting on a couch eating Cheetos, okay? Cheetos you probably can't afford because you just lost your job. Okay, now, if you're the Attorney General of Texas, do you know that you have to follow Supreme Court decisions? Of course you know that, right? So, but you've decided that your religious beliefs trump the rule of law in this country. He says that the Supreme Court, by making the decision they did, weakens the rule of law. Are you insane? No, you saying that you won't follow the Supreme Court weakens the rule of law. By definition, you're the one, as always with conservatives, doing the projection. Now, I want to explain this. This is really important and interesting. A lot of people think that during the Civil Rights Movement, that Martin Luther King and the other activists were doing civil disobedience. And they were at the local level. But they then think that King and the others were breaking the law. That's actually not true. King and the others were following the law as it was laid down by the Supreme Court and by the United States Congress. It was actually the local officials that were breaking the law. And then on top of that, they would use the force of local law to crack skulls and beat down and sometimes kill people that were fighting back within the law, right? So, and here we are again, many years later. Now, it's not blacks, in this case it's gay marriage, but the law is you must give a marriage license to anyone, whether they're gay or straight, because of equal rights under our Constitution. That was just decided. There is no ands, ifs, or buts in that decision, right? And here these guys are saying, even though we are the law here in the South, in this case Texas, and in many other places in the South, unfortunately, so we're not going to follow the law. It's when the people in charge go, I don't care. I don't care about the rule of law. I'm going to rip up your rule of law. I don't really care about democracy. I don't care about our system of government. When's the last time the South said they don't care about our system of government and wouldn't follow the laws? I think, did we have a little bit of a war over that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, who won that war? Do you remember?
I believe it was the United States.
That's right.
Now, I should note that the Attorney General of Texas is not the only individual who is going to refuse to follow the law. Mike Huckabee has released a few statements about the Supreme Court's ruling on same-sex marriage, and he would like to compare himself to Martin Luther King Jr. Very interesting. He says, I don't think a lot of pastors in Christian schools are going to have a choice but to resist. They're either going to follow God, their conscience, and what they truly believe is what the scripture teaches them, or they will follow civil law. They will go the path of Dr. Martin Luther King, who in his brilliant essay, The Letters from Birmingham Jail, reminded us that an unjust law is no law at all. But it's not an unjust law. An unjust law in the United States, where you're supposed to have a separation of church and state, is having one religion dictate the lives of everyone. And that's exactly what Mike Huckabee and conservatives in general want in this country. They want to go against the Constitution.
Martin Luther King argued for everybody to have the same rights. Huckabee's arguing for people to have different rights.
Amazing.
Huckabee's saying I should have more rights than gay people in terms of what the state allows for in marriage. No, I'm pretty sure Martin Luther King would not have agreed. Don't take his name in vain, okay? You want to make religious references? He was a reverend, okay? So you weren't on his side, and you're not on his side now. No one believes you're on his side. So let it go, okay? Don't pretend that you're the victim of injustice here. Now we have to treat gay people the same as all other people. Oh, the injustice, right? No, you're the bad guy, Mike Huckabee, and you know it. You're the bad guys of history. Now, look, you got a guy from Mississippi.
And now we finally have a Mississippi state representative by the name of Andy Gibson. And he's upset about this ruling, so he has suggested something a little different. He says that maybe the state should get out of the license business altogether.
Okay, let's just note, first of all, that the guy actually looks like he's from 1955. Okay, nice Mad Men haircut there, or even further back.
Okay, so he says, I don't know if it would be better to have no marriage certificate sponsored by the state or not, but it's an option out there to be considered.
So let's now note the irony of this. So they are saying, we will, now that you've given equal marriage rights to gay Americans, we will now voluntarily destroy the institution of marriage. But you said, I mean, you want to talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. You said it would be destroyed if we allowed it for gay people. And then the people destroying it is you. You're saying, well, then now I'm not going to give any licenses. Have at it, Hoss. I don't know, man. You guys are so wrong that it's hard to keep up with your logic with its twists and turns. And for now, for the 88th time, you're all incredibly wrong about the Bible. Yes, Solomon had 1,000 wives. 300 of them were sex slaves. 700 wives, 300 sex slaves. Yes, the Bible tells you exactly how you can rape your sex slaves, what is permissible and not permissible. It even tells the sex slave that if your master is cruel to you while he's raping you, it's okay. You must still abide by him anyway. You want to follow the Bible? Read the Bible. In Corinthians, Jesus tells you, you know what? Be single. Don't even get married. Okay, but
Bible studies with Jake.
Okay. So, oh, by the way, the reason you're not allowed to masturbate, it's because of Onan. His brother died, and according to the law in the Bible, he had to marry his brother's wife. He was already married, so he now has 2 wives. And God got really mad at him because as he was having sex with his deceased brother's wife, he pulled out and put his seed on the ground. And for that, God was so mad and was going to send him to hell and abomination and all that fun stuff. And that's why you're not allowed to masturbate, because you're not allowed to spill your seed on the ground. It actually doesn't come from masturbation. It comes from fucking your brother's wife while you still have a wife. No, wait, tell me again about how the Bible says it's one man and one woman.
Not only that, Cenk, remember, if you legalize same-sex marriage, that will lead to polygamy. You can't have that. The Bible's against that, right?
Speaking of which, we go to Pat Robertson next. He says, you're going to say that you like anal sex. Really? I think you're saying that. He says, you like oral sex, you like bestiality. Sooner or later, you're going to have to conform your religious beliefs to the group of some abhorrent thing. It won't stop at homosexuality. Actually, what doesn't stop at homosexuality is the Bible, which allows for wild polygamy. And again, Abraham, sex with a wife, the wife's maid, the wife's sister, and the wife's sister's maid. Okay? We didn't say it, the Bible said it. And again, with Pat Robertson saying, not that they'll make you like anal sex. He says, you're going to say that you like anal sex. You like oral sex. So he's saying if you allow it, well, obviously you're going to say that you're into anal, right? Are you with me? Are you with me? Right. No, we're not with you, Pat. See, that's what's going through your head. Speaking of which brings us to a study from a couple of years ago that perfectly represents the conservative mind. They did something interesting. They did actually 4 studies, and researchers looked at the discrepancies between what people say about their sexual orientation and their implicit sexual orientation based on a reaction time set. So how does this work? Participants indicated their own level of homophobia, both overt and implicit. In word completion tasks, students wrote down the first 3 words that came to mind when prompted with some of the word's letters. Students were primed at some point with the word gay to see how it impacted the amount of aggressive words used. Now, you ready for the twist? And some of you can see this coming, and I love this. Quote, those participants who reported their heterosexuality despite having hidden same-sex desires were also the most likely to show hostility toward gay individuals, including self-reported anti-gay attitudes, endorsement of anti-gay policies, and discrimination such as supporting harsher punishments for homosexuals. So, in other words, the people who were secretly the most gay or had attraction to the same sex the most, if they were closeted, would turn around and have the most hostility outwardly towards gays. So you show them pictures of naked dudes, their reaction is yes, 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 right?
Their internal reaction.
Right, their internal reaction as measured by the researchers. Their external reaction is, oh, gay, terrible, horrible. Not interested in that. I mean, no, please don't show that to me again. Okay, and look, one last thing from that study that was really interesting is they said a lot of these people, they were taught, when they looked further and they asked more questions, they were taught to be against gays. They were taught that being homosexual is a terrible thing. They got it oftentimes from their parents, their culture, perhaps some religious culture telling you how awful it is to be gay. And so part of it is their reaction. And here I'll quote the professor who was part of the analysis here. In addition, it appears that sometimes those who would oppress others have been oppressed themselves. And we can have some compassion for them too. They may be unaccepting of others because they cannot be accepting of themselves. And there you have virulent conservative reaction to homosexuals in a nutshell. Guys who have feelings that they can't accept for themselves, lashing out. We will not accept the gays. We will not accept the gays. Understand that based on science, what they're actually saying is we cannot accept ourselves. So I don't know if that leads you to more sympathy for the people that we just mentioned here in an ironic twist, but I'll have no sympathy for them until they do the right things by all Americans. They want to be contrite and say, hey, our bad, you're right. It turns out, of course, all Americans should have the same rights. Then we're having a different conversation. Then we're talking about, hey, we forgive you for all of your past transgressions against justice and equality. But we're not at that point yet.